Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar, and Last of Us 2. I just finished it. Now it's for the review. Now, I've had this thing cooking for a little bit of time, but I wanted to beat the game. I really wanted to understand it, and I didn't want emotion or anything to get into the way, okay? I know that there's a lot of emotion involved in this game. Some people either love it, 10 out of 10, and some people are dropping 0 out of 10s for this game. For me, though, I want to cover everything good about this and everything bad about it, because I don't believe Last of Us 2 is a bad game. I also don't think it's a perfect game either. There's things this game does really well, and then there's things this game absolutely drops the ball on. Now, I like to break this review up into chunks, and I'm going to give the first part to graphics and sound. I think the first thing that really strikes me for how good a game sometimes can be is the graphic side of it. And the reason I say that is because you can really tell the proficiency of a game developer team by how well and how much they apply to themselves to the technical pieces of a video game. Now, Naughty Dog, to no one's surprise, can make a very good-looking game. They've done it for years on end. You know, any Uncharted game you fire up, the previous Last of Us, and even Last of Us 2, which is their best-looking and most technically impressive game by far. Now, I was blown away by Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy. I thought those games looked perfect. But Naughty Dog impresses me being a sole PS4 developer, but creating visuals on their system that are on par with some of the best visuals I've seen on PC, hands down. Last of Us 2 is a long game, and throughout the length you'll be playing this game, everything you see is unique. They really don't repeat assets. The level design is well done. The environmental storytelling is all there. The effects they pull off. The actual visual design of the game is top tier. Everything you see just kind of blows your mind away. I'd say the first hour or two of the game is fine and dandy, but when you get into Seattle, when you walk into this dense urban area, it honestly feels like you're looking at a next generation game. And when you're looking at Seattle as a whole, like, which is the main city you play in, the amount of decay you see, the actual like thick of the concrete jungle, so to speak, reminded me of playing Crysis 3. You know, when you're just sulking around this like concrete jungle, right? It really gives me that feeling. The actual animation work is so top tier, not just on the characters themselves, but even when you're in combat, because everything in this game is really dynamically done. So I feel like Naughty Dog has coded an actual animation for nearly every scenario you're in, every way you're fighting, and in every encounter that you're in. Even crawling around the actual like foliage, which is really well rendered, actually blew me away from a perspective of how well everything is interactive. There's weight to the world, and everything is just done in such a way that it's a fucking immersive title. And you can never take that away from Last of Us. It definitely immerses you in visually. As far as sound goes, the actual, you know, orchestrated soundtrack is great, but the sound effects are also really well done. Every time you're in a gunfight, or every time you're in an actual like stealth segment where you're like stabbing some dude in the neck, the voice work, the sound effect work is very well done. In a gunfight, of course, it feels like you're actually really there in the gunfight, like the bullets whizzing past you. This is something that Naughty Dog has perfected, and if sound, which is half of what you see anyways, half of what your brain is getting injected with, I'd say is also really well done. I mean, there are moments in this game where they have thought of almost everything. You know, when you're in an encounter, like a gunfight, for instance, and you pop someone's head, some of the other characters will outright name them, like, hey, Craig, holy shit, they're dead. This kept blowing me away. They actually focused on almost every single detail visually and from the sound perspective, where it really does immerse you. If anything, the visuals and sound in this game are great enough where you're going to be immersed all the way through. I will not take that away whatsoever. The gameplay for this game is something that kind of leaves me a little, you know, mixed. Now, if you are going to look at Last of Us 2's gameplay, understand that the biggest innovations in this game have been proning and jumping, right? Which jumping is sort of half of an included segment, because you could vault and do kind of most of the stuff in the prior game anyways. But yeah, those are the additions. As far as stealth additions go, they've added dogs, which aren't too difficult to beat because you can always just destroy their line of sight anyways. But yeah, that's really about it. The actual gameplay is pretty much identical from the prior game, Last of Us Remastered. The game it plays like something out of 2013. That's all I'm really going to say, okay? That's really what it comes down to. And that's something I didn't want to say. I feel as though as games evolve in 2020, the gameplay should also evolve. It shouldn't be stuck out of something from 2013. Now, the stealth segments, which I think it's fair to call Last of Us 2 a stealth game. I'm a person that's played plenty of stealth games in my life, so I think my opinion, definitely holds some weight here. Playing games like Splinter Cell, Metal Gear, Everything and Beyond, hell, if you want to include Siphon Filter in the mix, why not? Last of Us 2's stealth is kind of a joke. Every time you go into these encounters with stealth segments, they give you this sort of mini sandbox where they'll pop in like 4 or 5 enemies at a time. Sometimes you'll get maybe 10. But generally it comes down to making them follow up to a sound, manipulating the AI. And manipulating the AI is pretty easy. You can make a sound, you can break their movement pattern and just basically sneak up on it and waste them. And the thing is, their field of view is so narrow that manipulating them isn't exactly the hardest thing to do. So really, the stealth in this game is very, very, very easy to pull off. Even on harder difficulties, which is what I played on, the stealth really just kind of became something that you could very easily predict and very easily manipulate, which isn't really good. Now, the actual combat, hand-to-hand gun, was impressive. I love the hand-to-hand combat. They added in more of a player agency, so to speak, whereas in the previous game, you were really mashing square. In this game, a lot of the hand-to-hand comes down with you also mashing square, but also learning the proper timings to dodge. It kind of plays like For Honor in a way, where every time you're fighting, you're also like worrying about dodging, because the enemy's not stupid. They'll fight in a different way too. Sometimes enemies are quicker, and you have to really, really react on that as fast as you can, and I like that. The gunplay is very easy. The enemies don't really do a good job of fighting you with firearms, and so it really does become almost like a joke, something you can very easily deal with. The enemies are very, very dispatchable in any of these encounters. Because again, the AI is from 2013, the gameplay is also from 2013. It's very easy to figure out in the early hours how you're supposed to play the game. And even on the harder difficulties, I won't say that the combat becomes any more difficult. The enemies may be more aggressive, but again, once you figure out how to manipulate the AI, it makes the whole situation just much more easier. So yeah, that's all I really have to say from the gameplay. The moment-to-moment, gameplay transition, the general, Naughty Dog formula is done pretty well. With all of that said, though, I'm not going to say that the gameplay is awful. If you enjoyed Last of Us Remastered, which I did, I definitely had these same complaints with the previous game, I'll say this much, it's serviceable. Did I expect it to upgrade? For sure, and that's why I keep mentioning it. But if you were to play this game, I don't think you would necessarily be just completely thrown away by the gameplay. I've seen a lot of people make that complaint, but I just don't see it. I can play the game, and it definitely didn't turn me away. In fact, I'll say one thing, the game has some environmental puzzles that I think are very well handled. So it's definitely an upgrade from the prior game's puzzle segments where they were just, find a plank, find where to place the plank, walk over the plank, same thing to do with ladders. This game improves on that front at least. Everything does flow together a lot more smoother. Now, the final crux of this whole review, which is where I think it goes down to the 4 out of 10, is the story, okay? And the story is the biggest deal for Last of Us 2. Now, I'm just going to be real with you, okay? I'm not going to complain about this game's story in the same way you'll see a lot of people review bombing it for. I don't care about whatever pandering Naughty Dog is doing. I don't give a shit about that. I'm going to tell you why I find the story to be bad. I'm not going to give you full spoilers, but I'm going to tell you that this is a revenge story. Okay, imagine playing a revenge story where you don't actually deal the revenge at the end. Now, I'll say something here, okay? When you start this game off, okay, you play as Joel, right? And Joel explains to Tommy why he decided to, kill Marlene at the end of Last of Us 1 to save Ellie. If you don't know, at the end of Last of Us 1, you take Ellie to the hospital, which you're going to for the whole time to get the cure. Turns out that the Firefly doctors are actually going to kill Ellie in order to create a vaccine. Joel, because he, finds his daughter again in Ellie, decides to say, "Yeah, fuck, I'm not gonna let that happen." Kills the Fireflies, kills the doctors who are doing the procedure, and takes Ellie all the way back with him to Tommy's settlement. And from there on in, you go years down the road, Ellie grows some resentment because Joel effectively has kept this secret from her. And it's understandable why he would do it, why he would go through with it. Is it a decision that you would make lightly? No, it's definitely a decision that, has a lot of implications for the bad and also for the good. Some would say it's very selfish. And it's where, in this case, when you walk into Last of Us 2, you get introduced to a character named Abby. Abby is the daughter of one of the doctors Joel killed. So she is seeking revenge on Joel in the very beginning of the game. This is where she kills Joel outright with like a golf club and pretty much ends his life within the first hour, 2 hours of this game. He doesn't live past any of that. Now, after that whole segment happens, the game switches to Ellie, who is now on a revenge quest as she heads to Seattle to find Abby and the other people involved and kill them one by one. Which she successfully fucking does, by the way. She pretty much, her and Tommy end up killing a lot of the people involved, save for Abby. Now, in this case, you've heard a lot of people refer to this game as Schindler's List, where some really dark stuff happens. And while this game does get dark, I'm going to laugh and say it's not fucking Schindler's List. Let's calm down there a little bit. It does get dark. There's moments where Ellie does stab a woman that's pregnant at the time. And this is supposed to be a pretty heavy scene, which, to be fair, it is. But I wouldn't say that it's the heaviest scene, and maybe that's just me being desensitized from a lot of stuff over on, a lot of other movies and gaming mediums that are out there. Now, after the 3 days you spend in Seattle seeking revenge as Ellie, the game does a shift to Abby, where she goes through those same 3 days again. So it's a perspective change, and then you see the 3 days from the eyes of the person that killed Joel. Now, I'm going to say this much. Abby is not a bad character. Abby is a pretty strong chick. You know, obviously, you know, she's, whatever you want to talk about the appearance, she's a strong soldier, right? And she can pretty much deal what she can. She has her own skill set, her own gameplay tree. It is what it is. I don't consider her to be a bad character. Now, listen, I feel bad for Abby, okay? Let me tell you why I feel bad. Because Naughty Dog shafted her on her appearance, on her introduction to the game. Now, I love this game series called Yakuza. It has 7 mainline franchises, 7 mainline series in the franchise, Yakuza 0 to Yakuza 6. Now, in these games, you play the role of an individual named Kazuma Kiryu, who is a semi-former Yakuza agent, right? And in this game, he's a character with a heart of gold, but obviously he's a criminal. You know, he's a hardened criminal. And the same you could say for Joel, if you want to draw a parallel. You know, he spent 20 years of his life post-apocalypse doing what he can to survive, whether that be a hunter or a smuggler. I mean, he's admitted in the last game that he's done things to survive. You know this isn't a good character. Now, imagine in Yakuza 7, if they introduce a new protagonist, which they are, just comes out of nowhere, beats the shit out of Kazuma, the character that you've grown up, that you've loved, that you've interacted with over the years, beats him up in the worst way within the first 2 hours of the game, puts a bullet in his head, pees on his corpse, and walks away. That's kind of the same disrespect you're fucking getting. Now, Abby, I feel, was kind of shafted. She was introduced to us in such a negative way. So when you're playing with her halfway through the game, everyone's always going to have that on the back of their mind, and that's the problem. Because she is not a bad character. She has just been introduced in the worst way. Now, towards the end of this game, this revenge segment that you're supposed to chase for throughout the entire experience ends up getting shafted, because you never actually get revenge, all right? I'm just going to leave it at that. It's completely wasting my time the entire way through. Now, I'm going to tell you something about this game's story, something that should have been completely rewritten. They should never have put Joel and Ellie into the game, okay? Let me explain it like this. When you play as Abby, towards the end of the game, you team up with an individual named Lev. Lev is from a group called the Seraphites, who Abby's team, the WLF, Washington Liberation Front, is currently at war with. When they end up meeting up, they're very reprehensive at first, but very quickly they become warm together. They understand that, hey, they're in this like relationship. They're brought together by fate. And it almost mirrors the first Last of Us with Joel and Ellie. Obviously, they're not friendly in the beginning of the game. By the end of it, you know, they're willing to like sacrifice their life for each other. And that's sort of the same thing you get with Last of Us Part 2. I feel this game would have been better had they never mentioned Joel and Ellie. I mentioned this when I talked about the initial leaks. This game franchise didn't need to have a sequel to Joel and Ellie. It could have just focused on Abby. Abby is a former Firefly, and something that I feel that should have just happened is instead of the Joel and Ellie plot, they should have kept Abby as a character and focused on the Fireflies fighting the remnants of the United States government, or Fedra. If you remember, there are multiple factions in the original game, one of them being Fedra, the former US government, and the Fireflies. They're constantly fighting each other. Abby if anything, the flashback scenes would have been great if we could have seen some of that war happening. The motives of the Fireflies, why they're finding the cure, we understand, but how the Fireflies were formed, how they fought against the US government. And then later on, look at how the WLF are fighting these cultish Seraphites. It would have been great to have some lore building in the post-apocalypse, and I feel not doing that was a missed opportunity. Now, towards the end of the game, I will say that thinking the way that I think now, I want to see more of Abby, because I know there's going to be a Last of Us Part 3. And yes, while all of this happened, in a way, I wish Last of Us 2 focused more on Abby, just Abby, and her prior connections as a Firefly. Instead of focusing on a revenge plot, it would have been interesting if they kind of kept the same idea of find a cure, team up with these Seraphites, team up with you, to have this Lev-Abby relationship form throughout the whole game. If they had done that and focused on these factions, focused on the history, the lore of Last of Us, because remember, there's a lot we missed. The first game had a 20-year time skip. It would have been great if we got to see some of the world beforehand, more of it, and understood more of why these factions do what they do, instead of going after a revenge story that ultimately didn't go anywhere. But yeah, that's really what I think about this whole storyline and why I'm most disappointed with it. I'm not going to go on why everyone else talked about it, why everyone else, sort of hated it for absolute BS reasons, in my opinion. I do have reasons why I don't like the story, and I've listed them in front of you. I've told you why I think that the story that they went for just wasn't worth it, in my opinion. Had they went my way, I think it may have made a better game. In closing thoughts, I think it's easy to hate Last of Us 2. You have a lot of people who are prejudiced against certain aspects of the game. Some people have not played the game and hate it, but I wanted to really spend my time and tell you what really, really bugged me about the storyline. If they had made the story the way that I'm pitching it to you, I think this would have made for a far more interesting and better Last of Us 2 experience. Now, overall, I give this a 4 out of 10 because story for The Last of Us was the most important part. I feel they dropped the ball hard on the story, personally. And that's just my opinion. Look, opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one. This is just my opinion. But to say that it's a 0 out of 10 like some people are putting it, I think 4, maybe 5, okay, 6 out of 10, probably, 6 out of 10 might be the best review I can give it because, yeah, I have issues with the story. But I will say something, the gameplay, the sound, it's serviceable. Well, the gameplay is serviceable. Sound and graphics are amazing. I think this game has some redeeming qualities to it. Overall, would I play this game again sometime later? Maybe, way later. I'm not going back for a new game plus anytime soon. I just think after playing Last of Us 2 and experiencing the ending and seeing the story for what it was, would I recommend you pick up Last of Us 2? Oh yeah, I do. When it's on sale, definitely. But for now, probably save your money for Ghost of Tsushima. Hopefully that's good. Or Cyberpunk 2077. Pick this game up when it's on sale. It's not worthless. I just don't think it's worth $60 right now. But that being said, though, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mutahar, and I'm out.